Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you on CTRL YOUTH conference organized by the MCC Youth Research Institute and the National Media and Info Communication Authority. First, I would like to ask Mr. Ákos Somogyi, Head of Child Protection Department of National Media and Info Communication Authority, to hold his opening speech. Thank you.
Nagyon szépen köszönöm. Én is sok szeretettel és örömmel üdvözlöm Önöket ezen a konferencián. Nekünk az első a szervezeti egységemnek az MCC-vel közösen rendezett konferenciák közül, de azt gondolom, hogy egy nagyon jó szakmai program állt össze, és ezért köszönet az Ifjúságkutató Intézet vezetésének is. Azt gondolom, hogy ma már ez nem is kérdés, hogy a társadalmunk, vagy a társadalmak egyik legnagyobb kihívásai között lehet említeni a digitalizációt is, és ennek egyes hatásait. Első körben sokszor jut eszünkbe, hogy ennek adatvédelmi vagy más kockázati kérdései jutnak eszünkbe, de ma már nagyon sokat foglalkozunk azzal, hogy milyen akár demográfiai vagy az egészségügyi állapotunkra, az egészségünkre hatást gyakorló folyamatai vannak, vagy aspektusai vannak a digitális jelenlétnek, és hát ez a konferencia is azt tűzte ki célul, hogy olyan társadalomra hatást gyakorló részeit és megoldási lehetőségeit vizsgálja, amelyekkel közelebb kerülhetünk egy egészséges egyensúly megteremtéséhez, vagy éppenséggel egy megfelelő digitális jelenlét kialakításához. Ugye vizsgálhatjuk abból az aspektusból is, hogy szabályozzuk-e ezt a közeget, korlátozzuk az ott való jelenlétet. Azt gondolom, hogy nem kérdés, hogy erre szükség van, de emellett szükség van arra is, hogy fejlesszük a társadalom szereplőinek, edukáljuk őket, azt a fajta kritikai gondolkodást, azt a fajta szemléletmódot, amellyel egy változó, a digitális világ jelentős változásokon megy át percről percre akár, és hogy ebben a világban felkészítsük őket arra, és megtaláljuk azokat a megfelelő megoldásokat, amelyekkel a saját érdekeiket, a saját céljaikat, vagy éppen össztársadalmi érdekeket eredményesen tudnak képviselni, vagy megvédeni saját magukat. Ezt az edukációs tevékenységet a Nemzeti Média és Hírközlési Hatóság is most már nagyon régóta végzi és műveli. Nagyon sok fiatallal, de felnőttel is van lehetőségünk találkozni, és támogatjuk őket abban, hogy tudatos és felelős médiafogyasztók legyenek, és ebbe értem bele az online teret is egyértelműen. Külön öröm számomra, hogy nemzetközi szakértők is jelen vannak. Ez nem egy államra, nem egy országra vonatkoztatott kérdéskör, hanem ez államokon átívelő, és ezért nagyon fontos az a fajta tapasztalatcsere vagy közös gondolkodás, amelyet céljául tűzött ki ez a konferencia is. Én nagyon bízom benne, és remélem, hogy olyan jó gyakorlatokat, olyan hasznos tanácsokat, vagy tapasztalatokat hallhatunk majd önöktől is, és minden szakértőtől, természetesen a hazai szakértőktől is, amelyek gazdagítanak bennünket, és mindenki a saját tevékenységében tovább tudja ezeket majd hasznosítani. Ez a fórum, ez célul tűzte ki, hogy a társadalom oldaláról és a szabályozás a szakma oldaláról is megvizsgálja a digitális lét kihívásait. Én nagyon üdvözlöm ezt a konferenciát, és nagyon jó tanácskozást és értékes gondolatokat kívánok mindannyiunknak. Nagyon szépen köszönöm, hogy meghallgattak.
Thank you for your speech, Mr. Head of Department. And now I would like to ask Ms. Georgina Kiskozma, Deputy Director of Youth Research Institute, to take her opening speech. Köszönjük szépen főosztályvezető úr nyitóbeszédét, és most szeretném felkérni Kiskozma Georginát, az MCC Ifjúságkutató Intézet igazgató helyettesét, hogy tartsa meg beszédét.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, it's a great pleasure to welcome you to the Control Youth Conference, jointly organized by Youth Research Institute and the National Media and Info Communications Authority. We are especially pleased to see such a diverse group of experts, researchers, and participants gathered here today to reflect on a topic that profoundly shapes both our present and our future, the relationship between digital technology and younger generations. Today, the digital world is no longer just a tool or a backdrop. It is an environment in which we live our lives. It is where we learn, connect, and access information, and it is increasingly influences how we think, behave, and even how we see ourselves. This is particularly true for young people for whom the digital space is not something new, but a natural part of everyday life. Throughout the day, with contributions from both Hungarian and international experts, we will explore how the digital environment affects young people's mental well-being, social relationships, and learning patterns. We will also examine the risk associated with screen use, as well as the safeguards that can help us respond to these challenges in a responsible and balanced way. We will then broaden our perspective to consider the wider societal implications of technological innovation, how it is reshaping communities, economic structures, and social interactions, and what long-term consequences may emerge from these transformations. In the afternoon, our focus will turn to artificial intelligence, particularly its growing role in education and the workplace. We will look at how learning processes are evolving, how skill demands are changing, and what new opportunities and challenges this technological shift presents. Finally, we will close the day by addressing the question of social media regulation, whether and how we can strike a balance between the openness of digital platforms, their societal impact, and the need for responsible governance. The aim of this conference is not simply to provide answers, but to foster meaningful dialogue. The challenges and opportunities of the digital world are deeply interconnected, and only through shared thinking can we begin to address them effectively. Let me conclude with one key thought. The real question is not whether digital technology is part of our lives, but how we shape it consciously and responsibly to serve both individuals and communities. I wish you an inspiring and engaging conference full of valuable insight and productive discussions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Deputy Director. Followed by the opening speeches, now I would like to ask Mr. Laurent Ozon, the CEO of Strargum, to take his presentation. Köszönjük szépen igazgató helyettes asszonynak, és most pedig a köszöntőbeszédek után szeretném megkérni Laurent Ozont, a Strargum vezérigazgatóját, hogy tartsa meg előadását.
Okay. Good morning. I use an Hungarian slide, and I speak in English. Okay. First of all, congratulations to the Matthias Corvinus Collegium, which has been carrying out this groundwork for years to shape minds. And thank you for inviting me to open this event. The theme of this seminar, digital citizenship, could just as easily be called citizenship at the risk of digital technology. For it is indeed this risk that today's proceeding would seek to explore, shedding light on them and perhaps proposing solution. Yeah, it's the number 2. Okay. What you will be exploring today is considerably more unsettling than supply how to be a good digital citizen. You will be examining the risk associated with the intensive use of screen, with trimming our primary interface with digital tools actually, the social consequence of technological innovation, the emergence of artificial intelligence. In fact, artificial intelligence, it's a little bit an exaggeration. It's algorithmic, in fact. And this emergence of algorithmic in our educational and professional lives. And finally, the issue of social media and the rise of a political ideological imperative for regulation, which reflects real problems, but also provides a pretext for new controls. Yeah, it's correct. All your works today is based on 2 fundamental observations. First observation, technology increases our productivity, broadens its scope of application, and permits every aspect of our life through our own decision, but also through other that we do not choose. Most of what passes for technical progress in everyday life consists of learning to use products manufactured on automated production line in fragmented assembly processes spread across dozens of countries. Products that are virtually incomprehensible and irreparable for those who use them. Think of the last time you update an app. Not because you wanted to, but because the company that runs your smartphone, your computer, deem it useful. It's not a choice. It is a demand. And many have even relinquished control over this update, but by automating them, having long since ceased to know what is being changed, modified, or retrieved from the digital tools to which we entrust our entire lives, and which we are, as a result, the most intimate tools we have ever known. If we stop to think about it for a moment, the idea that third parties, the company, could come along and help themselves to alter, transform, and reorganize an intimate tools containing important information about you, about your loves, about your lives, would have been considered scandalous just a few years ago. If this is not longer the case, it is because we have gradually come to accept that these intimate tools, a prerequisite for social life, a means of payment, a tracker of our habits, a recorder of our ideas, our passion, and our entire lives, was no longer merely a tool at our disposal, but a collective system dependent at every moment on thousands of other capabilities that we do not possess. This same logic, the transformation of an individual tool into a node within a collective system that transcends and controls it, it precisely at work when we develop driverless vehicles. A personal vehicle, symbol of freedom and autonomy, thereby becomes a carriage in a new kind of public transport system. A second observation, briefer and accompanying the first like of shadow, the inevitability of this process. Most of us consider the acceptance of certain technology or family of technology to be inevitable. And the argument that comes up once we have dismissed the now famous its progress is the argument of performance. It's to be more efficient, faster, cheaper, more powerful, etc., etc. We accept this process because we convince ourselves that it is the essential condition not only for avoiding subjugation by others, but also for prospering and on an individual level for finding our place in the world. That seems perfectly legitimate, isn't it? Yeah. All the more so has this demand for efficiency and productivity is often accompanied by the famous others are doing it if we don't well be left behind. These competitive imperatives speak to us of power dynamics. And it is already realistic to take an interest in power dynamics. For our needs, our freedoms, and our rights require the capacity to confront power dynamics. But should we not, in the same of this very realism, be mindful of our technology mastery, our autonomy in innovation, our unpredictability, in short, the maintenance of a capacity for technical creation, whose power does not necessarily lie in a comparison or raw efficiency with rival systems, but also in our ability to make our tools obey us, to master the technology we use in depth. Let us take an example. There is greater technological expertise in an organic farmer who analyzes his soil, understands the chronobiology of growth cycle, and sort and select his seeds, than in a farmer shut away in his airtight tractor to avoid breathing in the poison he sprays on patented GMO crops purchased each year from transnational or multinational. The former knows, the late operate within a system from which he is excluded, both in terms of detail, understanding, and the ability to make repairs. On paper, the chain of expertise, innovation, research, logistics involved in the system that enable the second farmer to have a sealed tractor, patentable biotechnology, compatible with a specific herbicide, is certainly more efficient than that which enables biodynamic farming to operate. No doubt. All in all, that may well be the case, and yet, which of the two farmers is more competent? Which of the two farmers is more autonomous? Which of the two farmers is more powerful? To simplify our subject, we must no doubt consider that there are fundamentally two technical logics. The technology we call appropriate in the sense given by the term of Schumacher, not the pilot, or the Schumacher, preserve an understanding of how things work. the competence to design and use, autonomy, and the ability to make and repair things oneself. Assimilationist technologies will make us dependent and practically incompetent by plunging us into a system made up of tools we no longer master, on which we nevertheless dependent vitally, and with which we become a little more assimilated every day. At the heart of every choice we make, whether choosing an energy source or a human-machine interface, a car or a smartphone, the question that always remains is this: what of our autonomy, our freedoms, and the foremost of these, our ability to exert control over that which exert control over us, to decide for ourselves what is good for us. Let us pose a question that will be the gain in power, social stability, wealth, sovereignty, etc., for countries that see AA, artificial intelligence, algorithmic, in fact, deployed and thus lose 30 or 50% of available job over the next 20 years. What is the gain in power for this country? Some, such as Kurzweil, the theoretician of singularity, are already hailing this as the dawn of post-biological golden age, whilst others perceive it with equal conviction as a nightmare dressed up in the language of convenience and connectivity. We will no doubt need to avoid this two position, and the work you will be doing today lies precisely in the space between them. For what is at stake is not simply our comfort, our productivity, or our individual and collective competence. What is at stake is our ability to preserve autonomy and sovereignty, that is to say, let us never forget life and liberty. At a time when international events falsely remind us that the balance of power is determined not only by the clash of technological and military budgets, but by the ability to think strategically, to capitalize on one position, to maintain a form of technological and decision-making sovereignty, to keep one's secrets, to protect one's room from maneuver, and to exercise one's own ingenuity without succumbing to the insentient clamor of pseudo-fatalism, lyrical flight of fancy, wrestling speech about unwavering and eternal friendships, and illusion of invulnerability. We will always come back to this obvious fact. The technology we need will always be the one for which we ourselves decide the application for ourselves. Thank you very much. Good job, good works, and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. CEO, for your thought-provoking presentation. Köszönjük, főigazgató úr, gondolatébresztő előadását. How does daily screen use affect on mental health, attention, and social relations of the young generation? Our next panel explores the risks of the digital environment and the possible safeguards. I would like to welcome on podium Mr. Michael Marinaccio, Managing Director of Center for Responsible Technology, Mr. Carlton Brick, Sociologist Researcher, and Ms. Borbála Timár, expert of digital child protection from EduTech Hungary. And the panel will be moderated by Ms. Panka Király, student of MCC. Hogyan hat a napi képernyőhasználat a fiatal generáció mentális egészségére, szociális kapcsolataira és figyelmére? A következő panelünk ennek kockázatait és lehetséges védőstratégiáját vizsgálja. Hívom a színpadra Michael Marinacciót, a Center for Responsible Technology ügyvezető igazgatóját, Carlton Bricket, a szociológus kutatót, Timár Borbálát, a digitális gyermekvédelem szakértőjét az EduTech Hungary-től, és Király Pankát, az MCC diákját, aki moderálni fogja a következő beszélgetést.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first panel as well. My name is Panka, as you could hear in the introduction, and today we're going to talk about the risks and safeguards in digital screen use. Just to give a little context for the panel, the digital technology isn't just a tool anymore. Today, it's the environment where our youth live, learn, and socialize. But as we embrace the benefits, we must also address the friction points. Today, we're exploring how to find balance between technological progress and the well-being of the next generation. And I'm honored to introduce you to our panelists, and thank you for helping us to navigate this very complex topic. To begin with, my first question is for Mr. Marinaccio. The Center for Responsible Technology often looks at the systemic nature of digital platforms. In your view, what is the single most significant shift in how screen time affects youth today compared to, for example, just 5 or 10 years ago?
Sure, thank you very much. Before I say the single greatest shift, I would say the good news is that in the past 2 to 3 years, we've seen a tremendous shift of at least parents who are waking up to the problem. So we're starting to realize that it is a problem. The bad news is that we live in Aldous Huxley's world where there's too much information, and so there's a lot of competition over what we know and what we don't know, and not a lot of people are understanding the problem. If I were to put my finger on the most significant part, I would say that we are on the cusp of the death of the literary and oral kind of community culture. And so we are not reading books anymore. I don't think I have to cite the statistics on that. But the question is, on a community aspect, when I was a teenager, citing my own experience, we went out, we drank, we had fun, we got hurt, we got in trouble. Young people, young adolescents are not having that experience anymore because they've grown up in a social infrastructure which is undergirded by technology. So everything that we do is technological. And so kids are staying home, on whatever they play over here. They play Fortnite, or they play Minecraft, or they're on Facebook. And they're not doing things, they're not getting out and living. And so it doesn't matter if you choose to opt out of screens for your child, or you try to live a physical life, if there's a negative space problem where there is no opportunity besides what is digital or technological. And so I would say that's the largest problem. Again, the good news is that the tide is turning, and that's what my organization, the Center for Responsible Technology, works on, is trying to figure out, from a public policy standpoint, how do we fix that, again, social infrastructure and fix the negative space so we can start living real life again and get off our couches.
Yeah, although the questions are individualized, feel free to chime in or chip in on any points or if you have anything to add on. But now I will turn to Dr. Brick. As a sociologist, I want to know your 2 cents on how these habits of digital screen use shape identity. Are we seeing a fundamental change in how young people from social bonds because of the mediated nature of the screens and etc.?
I think we are. But I don't think there's anything necessarily new in this. Throughout history or throughout the kind of culture of young people have created relationships, created social bonds that differentiate themselves from other generations. So I don't think there's anything particularly new in that. I'm a risk skeptic. Yes, there are people, individuals have problems with objects, technology, substances. However, I think there's a kind of culture that pre-exists the social realm, which I disagree with Michael in the sense that I don't think it's the digital realm that creates problematic social relations. Those social relations have already been problematized. So we live in a culture that accentuates the idea that all social contact is potentially damaging, whether in real time or in virtual space. And I think kind of social media becomes a way of, or the problematization of social media becomes a way of excusing the fact that the culture we live in, the material culture, the real world, the so-called real world, has problematized the idea that we are sociable beings. And I think there's a danger that kind of in looking at that, fetishizing the digital realm, that we actually alienate ourselves from ourselves, in the sense that the digital realm is an extension of our social lives, of our real world activities. So I think there's a case to be made that actually the digital realm, the digital self, can be a positive. It can, and if you look at the evidence, and I think kind of there's a body of work that exists that kind of says that the digital realm, the social media, there's no, yes, it can be good, it can be bad. But I think the important point is that our social lives, our digital lives, our online lives, are reflections of our offline lives, rather than the other way around. I think that's an important balance to have. And I would argue, to bend the stick, that the digital realm plays a positive in the way in which we see ourselves, are able to articulate ourselves. It presents an opportunity to freely explore ourselves that the kind of the material, the real, so-called real world might restrict, and I think is an important area for young people to experiment with their identities, to experiment with expressing themselves, and to be creative about who they are. So I see the digital realm, the social media, through less pessimistic eyes than perhaps the way that we generally try and understand the digital realm as somehow a problem or somehow not a real world. I think it's a very real world which offers opportunities to express new forms of sociability, new forms of identity construction and experimentation.
So let me say, this may be a statement, this may be a question. I think if you were to take a bunch of healthy children and layer on tools, I would agree with you, right? It's an extension. Tools are always extensions of our physical body. The question that I ask is, for young children in school who have been brought up through educational technology and have extremely stunted cognitive formation on a very basic neurobiological level, does that not have an impact on society and our politics, right? If you look at the formation level. So I think we would agree, but I would disagree on the young child level.
I'm not arguing that there aren't problems with this stuff and we don't develop problematic relations, and those problems are very real. But again, I think there's a danger that we kind of fetishize the technology as a way of excusing ourselves of our agency in this, to use a word. So, for example, across Europe now, and I think globally, there are moves to ban smartphones within classrooms.
I think they've done it here, right?
In Hungary? Right,
Yes.
okay.
I was
yes.
about to give the floor to Ms. Timar on this topic because
Sure.
we actually
Okay.
made progress on this field of teaching children conscious use of technology. So, Ms. Timar, you work closely with the educational sector in Hungary, and we often talk about the safeguards. This is actually in the name of our panel. So, how do we move from simple restrictions, like taking the phone away, to empowerment, like teaching them conscious use of technology within the school systems?
Thank you. First, I would like to connect what I would like to say to the other panelists. The first thing is that if we talk about safeguarding in terms of child online protection, that means that we would like to protect them or attempt to protect them from online risks. But this formulation has some negative assumptions in two ways. One is that we think that something we call the internet is inherently dangerous for children, and this is something similar what you just said, that in the digital world there are dangerous things and there are positive things for children also. On the other hand, if we talk about safeguarding, that would mean that this is the role of us, the role of adults, to protect children in the online world, which is definitely not true, because we have to take into account the opportunities of children and also their agency, even though because our aim is to make them to be a conscious and agentic media user when they become adults. So that not means that we don't need any protection or we don't need anything to help children or we don't need regulation. But we need a kind of a conscious combination of regulation and education. We have to develop competence and we also have to develop media literacy. So we can say that child online safety is not just a technological issue but a pedagogical issue. And talking about smartphone restriction, yes, in Hungary there is this smartphone restriction, which in some sort, it's very useful because it takes out children from this continuous online presence on platforms which they have the continuous scrolling, continuous mechanical, boring, mindless media use, infinite scrolling, which has a harmful effect on their attention, the concentration, and cause anxiety and a lot of other stuff. But we also have opportunities on using digital devices in school. We can set a model for a purposeful, meaningful online use that not causes this kind of disadvantages. That's why a complete mobile phone ban is not kind of a useful solution because in a school system also we have to teach children how to develop their online skills. And also you just talked about young children and older children. So I think this is very important to make a difference between the different ages. So for very young children this is absolutely not useful in any terms to use digital technology, but when they become to the school age, education and protection must go together.
Now, anything to react on the Hungarian method?
The Hungarian method. I'm going to offer the Scottish method, if such a thing exists. Maybe not the Scottish method, if you know anything about Scotland. I think that smartphones should be banned in classrooms or restricted in classrooms, but I don't think it's the role of government to do that. It's the role of teachers to discipline and exert their authority over the classroom. And I think that's what's missing in a lot of these debates, is that we look to some rule, some law to actually mitigate ourselves as educators from the responsibility of disciplining and exerting our own authority in the classroom. So yes, I think the smartphone in lecture, I've had students in lectures who constantly use smartphones, and my trick is I generally stop talking and wait for them to kind of realize that, oh, he stopped talking. So, and I've excluded students in the past as well for using smartphones. So I think as educators, we've kind of outsourced our own crisis of authority to the digital world, or we're blaming the digital realm for what is actually a cultural crisis in knowledge and education. So I think Michael raises an important point about children, young people not reading books. But again, I don't think that's a consequence of social media. It's a consequence, certainly in my experience, of higher education as a higher education lecturer, that the institutions that I've worked in have had no expectation that the students should read books. So when you empty the education process of its knowledge content, that vacuum is filled by things like the digital realm and AI. But I suppose my point is that the problem is the problem is not AI itself. It's the cult or the emptying out of the educational process of what education is for, which has happened before AI fills that vacuum. So again, my point is kind of we point to the digital realm, the digital sphere as being the problem, but I'm saying there's a kind of very real cultural problem here that precedes that.
I mean, I think you make an excellent point, and I would say that there should be no role for government as long as parents and educators are stepping up and doing the right thing. However, they have not. And the however actually is a bit more dastardly, if that's a word that translates well on the screen, because the medical community, and I may be speaking as an American, I don't know about the medical community internationally, but the medical community and the education community dropped the ball for 30 years, right? And so the question is, what do you do when there is no more reading? What do you do when there is no community? What do you do? And, you know, I am a Republican from the United States, a conservative, and I wish that government wasn't required. That would be lovely. However, I know a lot of parents. I'm a parent of 5 children, and parents are not doing the job, right? And teachers are not doing the job, and public educators, unfortunately, do not have the wherewithal to enforce in the classroom, right? They are actually told by their superiors, let it go. And so, yeah, we do have a structural societal problem where I wish it didn't have to rely on central government to come down and say yes or no, but that is where we're at.
I think in terms of this topic, in terms of child online protection, we must talk about the kind of ecosystem approach. So I think a regulation do have a task on child online protection, because there are things that they must do, but also there is a responsibility of the industry, there is the responsibility of education, there is the responsibility of medical expert, and they all together are responsible to have children live in a healthy online world.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that one of the main products that my organization is working on is a non-governmental set of guidelines. So we're building a K through 12 certification for responsible technology in schools in the United States to go into schools and look at how they use technology and certify them. And so this is an example of an institution doing the work instead of government.
Now, do you have any kind of feedback on how, like, how the media use within the schools now? Like, how do you see the field of technology used through your organization?
So I don't want to labor on with the specifics of the certification, but I will summarize it in a few sentences by saying we take the approach, if you are familiar technologically with blacklisting and whitelisting, currently the way that educators take on technology is a blacklist. They say all technology, except that like one really bad one. We take on a whitelist approach, which is no technology except the ones that affect educational outcomes in a positive way. And so you actually have to make the case that this use of technology is good for this or that. And so we're trying to remove one-to-one, we're trying to remove smartphones, and instead ask the question, and I have examples, is an electron microscope in a biology lab useful? Absolutely. Is a computer with Rhino or 3D processor, 3D printer or a router in a wood shop useful? Absolutely. So again, taking the whitelist approach and getting rid of all of the one-to-one.
I just want to come back slightly on the role of government in this process. I guess it's a question of what government. Because I want to use an example from the Scottish political setup. So on May the 7th, Scotland has its parliamentary elections. Scotland's a devolved state within the UK and has responsibility for health and education policy. The ruling government in Scotland is the Scottish Nationalist Party. Now, a couple of weeks ago, a prospective candidate for the Scottish Nationalist Party came out and openly said and is campaigning for election on the premise that school children don't need to be taught reading, writing, and arithmetic because students have access to calculators and computers. Now, I don't want that government interfering in anything to do with a child's education. So I kind of think there is a...
That's abusive. That's abusive.
Absolutely. But these are the types of people that are being elected to form governments. So I think I do take your point, but again, it's a question of not all government intervention at all times is a good thing. So I think, again, it's the nature of the policy, it's the nature of the intervention, and again, I come back to the question of where is this helping teachers, or is this actually undermining further the authority of the teacher in the classroom? And certainly I think within a UK context and a European context, I think it's the latter. I think we're letting and I take Michael's point. Yes, we failed to step up, but I think we're letting ourselves off the hook. We need to start holding ourselves to account as educators and exerting our authority in the classroom again.
I want to circle back because you mentioned, and we've touched upon AI, which is pretty much like alternating all the fundamental principles we know today about technology use. And I want to know your opinions on, as generative AI becomes integrated in our everyday screen use, do you think our current safeguards need like a complete reboot and we need to change them or alter them as generative AI becomes more and more popular and expands?
So I always want to start by saying that I have worked in AI for a long time. And so I started building computers when I was in middle school. building websites, and I've worked with machine learning tools since their advent, at least 8, 7, 10 years ago, right? And they're much older than that. And I say this because I like to differentiate between field-specific narrow data machine learning and LLMs and what we have today, which is this weird marketing AI hype, right? There's something deeply insidious about these currently marketed AI tools because they're built on this very unhealthy cognitive conditions that we've been talking about so far, right? It's, Marshall McLuhan famously said that the effects of any innovation occur before the innovation is created. And so what does that mean? That means there's a market demand for AI chatbots because we have kids who are not learning arithmetic, not learning to read, right? So AI chatbots arrive right at an opportune moment when we have kind of lost all of our basic skills of cognitive formation. And so that said, we need to be extremely careful when we use a phrase like digital citizenship, because I think that phrase has been co-opted by total consumption, media consumption, TikTok, Snapchat, whatever have you. I'm not saying that, like, to Carlton's point, this is a kind of a cultish fetishist around technology, but when you don't have the basis for basic cognitive formation, this becomes very exploitative, right? Chatbots become very exploitative. They take over. And so, to come back to the question of AI, does AI call a lot into question? Yes, absolutely. But only because we are already so far down the drain that to bring this technology about and to let it replace and automate life, love, work is extremely dangerous. So I just want to, again, to come back to my original point, LLMs and machine learning for water tables and energy sectors and national defense, there are wonderful applications that we do not talk about today. The ones that we talk about today, like talking to a chatbot or putting it in classrooms, completely different. And those need to be strongly differentiated.
Yes, so I'm a media literacy educator. So in my point of view, I think there is no need to do a complete reboot because with the appearance of artificial intelligence, it is once again proven how important is the development of critical thinking and media literacy skills, and it becomes more and more important. So that's why we talk about critical AI literacy, which is a very important point to understand the impact and the facts of generative AI, for example, focusing on its opacity, that it's a kind of black box, talking about AI hallucinations, the algorithmic bias, or the misrepresentations, what AI does. And also there are educational challenges in context of artificial intelligence, in terms of measurement and evaluation, or in terms of values also. And we must emphasize the importance of the AI companions you just mentioned, because it comes with a huge emotional attachment. And it's not the side effect of the technology, but it's part of its operation, because the system seems so personal that it causes a relational and emotional risk also.
I quite like AI. I use it.
What do you use?
I just kind of Google.
Gemini.
Gemini. Is that see? I don't even know the names that so I'm a slave to all this stuff. I think AI is a very useful tool, particularly in educational and research settings. However, once it's an aid to human thinking, it's an aid to the contestation of ideas. But once you remove those very human elements, thinking about the world and contesting the world through ideas and evaluating ourselves and our relationships with the world, AI takes on a different role. And to me, that's certainly in the years that I've been an educator, certainly the last 5 or 6 have been the most, not difficult, but the most frustrating, in the sense that I now, or as educators, we now spend our time trying to weed out AI-generated essays and assessment. That's because we have negated our responsibility to force our students to socialize our students in an educational community that is developed around the expansion of knowledge, the contestation of ideas, the access to a range of diverse ideas. So AI fills a void. It no longer becomes an aid to thinking, it becomes thinking itself. And one of the ironies of this, which I quite like the Marshall McLuhan quote, in that the problems precede the actual technology. Academic journals are now using AI to weed out AI-generated articles. Yes. And you just think, that's a complete that's not what academic journals are there for, So we have a circular, the tail is the head is eating the tail. And so, but again, AI itself is not it becomes a problem, but it's not the driver of the problem. The problem exists in our abdication of kind of the pursuits of knowledge, the socialization of young people into a contestant notion of ideas and a diversity of ideas.
Yeah, I let you comment on that. I just want to know, do you think it's possible to so bring in AI to teach children how to use them and how to be a conscious user of AI. But do you think, how is it possible to maintain critical thinking and creativity whilst teaching them to use AI in a correct way? So do you think it's possible to do both?
Yes. Currently, I'm thinking about this kind of method, and there are methods of this. For example, teaching a kind of critical prompting, or use AI in creative writing exercises. For example, we had a very funny exercise on this topic that students worked together. So 2 students and 1 AI had to work together, and their task was to rewrite a classic fairy tale. And so the prompt was write this fairy tale in a modern way. And then the 2 persons had to think about whether they like or don't like what AI does. And in terms of this creative writing process, it is easier for them to understand what they really need, what they really accept and not expect. And they have the opportunity to ask the AI to rewrite the thing. There is another method to make debates between AI, so 2 different AIs, and you make the debate, or you ask the AI to change the mood of what it's saying. So there are this kind of creative writing and using in a creative way Gen AI to learn critical thinking. And one other aspect is about AI-generated images, that there is only one thing that you can see, that there are 6 fingers, because this kind of visual problems will be better and better, so there won't be. But you must use your common sense to understand if does this make sense or or not make sense. For example, I'm sorry, just one more example. My daughter, just yesterday, she told me about a short video which she saw on Instagram. And she said that I've seen a baby, and the baby was put into a cave with snakes, and the snakes was really kind, and the baby was not afraid at all, and it was so interesting that she was just put it to the cave. And then I told her, did you realize that that was an AI generated video? And she didn't. So she was just find out that this is something strange, because this was the one and only video you told about to me, but she was not able to find out that this is AI, because it makes no sense, absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to unpack. Your question was, is there ability to teach AI literacy, maintaining critical thinking?
Yes.
And so I would say that chatbots are hilariously easy to use. The fact that we think we need to teach children to use them, I think, is strange. Same thing was true of the smartphones.
Let me rephrase, integrate.
Integrate, sure. But I want to be very specific about literacy, to use that word well. It does shock me that we talk about everything else in school. So we talk about drugs, smoking, sex education, driving, right? But we don't talk about this. And so do I think that there needs to be digital literacy in so much as warning people about the harms? Absolutely. Do I think that children have any business using chatbots in most of school, K through 12? No, absolutely not. And so, again, there's a lot to unpack here, but the point I'm trying to make is that the question of artificial intelligence, these products, they have so many problems. I'm just going to read a couple of them from my certification guidelines. We have 5 categories of risks. We have confounding or wrong data, leading to rampant hallucinations. So even Claude clocks in at around 55% accuracy, their own internal stuff. Errors in judgment and ethics in the systems. So you believe certain values about the world, ethics and judgment, ethical alignment. There's poor foundational learning. That's what, Carlton, we were talking about. Learned helplessness, skill loss through over-reliance, including plagiarism. Student data harvesting, unintended exposure to inappropriate content, relational, like the list goes on, right? On and on and on. And so I think Nicholas Carr thinks about expertise in 3 levels, A, B, and C, we'll say it. And it's, you know nothing, you're an amateur, you're an expert. Tools and technology are really good for experts. Like if you're a neuroscientist, or if you're an astrophysicist, for example, using LLMs to figure out physics questions, that's a great application, right? But if you don't know anything and you rely on AI chatbots, you will never learn. You will never be challenged, you will never have adversity, you will never learn anything about your discipline. For amateurs, which is the level B, you will never grow past what you already know because of the reliance on the system. And so, again, going back to the 3 levels, the first 2 levels, extremely dangerous. 3rd level, expertise, go have at it. But I don't think that happens in K through 12 schools.
Sorry, this is why I think media literacy education is important to answering your question.
Absolutely.
Because media literacy is based on the assumption that it uses the child's own experiences about the tools and technologies he or she uses. So it should be a good way to become an expert by understanding how and why do I use this specific technology, and then put the correct information to it to be able to understand how this system works and to be able to use them in a critical way.
Yeah, you should know what you're using, right?
Yep, I think
I'm
so.
just poking fun at you.
Yes, that's a slight at me. I just wanted to come back briefly on the example of the snakes in the cave and the child, which I think is very interesting. Does everybody know Disney's version of Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
That's a story about a young boy brought up by a bear. So I'm not sure AI is doing anything different than other technologies have done in the past. You know, it's I don't think there's much of a difference between the snakes in the cave and a young boy orphaned in the jungle being brought up by a bear and a group of other jungle animals. I think kind of, again, we're kind of fetishizing the technology as the problem, rather than the culture that doesn't socialize children into differentiating between what they see and what they believe. Because, you know, reading, I wanted to be brought up by wolves when I was a kid, because that's what stories were about, but kids being lost and being brought up by wild animals. So I don't think AI is doing anything particularly different than literacy, filmmaking, general kind of technology, the development of the human imagination, the ability to step outside of the real world and imagine new worlds. I don't think AI is doing anything particularly different. It might be doing it in a different way, but that seems to me a constant of the way in which we tell stories about ourselves, try and locate ourselves into the worlds, and particularly socialize younger people into the worlds that we live in through these kind of extreme mythologized fairy tales. So I don't think AI is doing anything particularly different there.
Let me ask, because I totally agree with you. And when I talk about AI, I say that it's more of a zeitgeist than it is a tool. It's more of an infatuation with this idea that we don't have to work anymore. And we don't have to hang out anymore. We don't have to talk anymore. We don't have to do hard things anymore. So it's just this kind of, to use your word fetish, this is fetishization of the end of life almost. Automate everything out of my life that I find uncomfortable or adverse. Would you think about it that way? Like
I kind of think that's an element of it. Yeah, and I particularly see that with students. It's like, hey, I don't have to write essays anymore. I can use a chatbot to do it for me, or I can use whatever.
Which is, again, the failure of the educators to properly explain what education is.
No, absolutely.
And what it is not.
Yes, absolutely.
And I have one more topic to touch upon before we run out of our time, is that many argue that the risk isn't just the screen itself, but as Ms. Timar mentioned already, but the algorithms behind it, designed for engagement. So how can we demand more responsible technology without stifling the innovation that young people clearly enjoy?
I'm happy to answer. I'm happy to talk. There's this really interesting study that Dr. Jared Cooney-Horvath, who's on my advisory board, cites. It's you can look it up, the International Computer and Information Literacy Study. It's international. There's a dozen or so countries that are involved in it. And I hope this doesn't surprise anybody, but in the time period that we have been doing this digital citizenship literacy, digital literacy experiment, digital literacy has gone down or stayed the same, right? And I can tell you, as a guy who was a COO of a medium-sized, large-sized data company, that this plays out in the workplace, where I'm getting these people who claim that they're, digital citizens and they're digital literate, and I'm like, well, can you write HTML? No. Can you design a graphic? No. Can you write? No. I'm like, well, what is it that you do here? And they scroll on TikTok at work all day long, right? And so, again, coming back to this concept of digital literacy, and to your question about innovation, the digital literacy has actually led to less innovation. These large companies, they actually crowd out innovation, right? If you look at Google or Amazon or Meta or Apple, there's not a lot of innovation going on there. They buy out all the innovative companies and then they squash them, they kill them. And so I think if you're truly concerned about innovation, You should be trying to get this stuff out of the classroom so we create brilliant minds who are creative and have critical thinking so they can be the next generation of people that can innovate. Right now, there's no innovation happening.
My problem with the algorithm is that it kind of just tells me what I already know. So I use a lot of, like Netflix, for example. It'll tell me, you will like this based on your previous viewing habits. Well, I kind of know the things I like, but I'd like to find some stuff that I've not seen before or I wouldn't normally watch. And to me, that's my problem with the algorithm, that it just kind of sells yourself back to you. Where it could be used to actually expand yourself, to introduce you to kind of new experiences. And that's actually one of the reasons I stopped using Facebook. And I kind of migrated over to Twitter or X as it is now. And also while I'm stopping using Twitter, because all I'm getting is stuff that I already know because I've liked some posts or I like this stuff. That's, to me, the problem with the algorithm. It's restricted, almost a kind of, it's become a vehicle for validating your own narcissistic self.
Sycophancy, right?
Yes, to a degree. And it could be used to much more kind of expansive purposes than just simply reflecting back to yourself.
I would like to go back to the topic of restrictions and bans and topic like this, which is connected to this topic because I think the age restrictions, such as the age restrictions on social media, in this way, they are not a good direction because they punish the user and shift the responsibility of protecting themselves from this kind of technology and this algorithm, or put the responsibility to the family that the parents has to defend the children from this kind of harms. So if the platform, they're building addictive platforms, and then they put the responsibility to the user, and all the digital well-being functions work on this way. So that's why some child protection experts also says that instead of age restrictions on social media, platforms should be regulated much more in order to be able to defend children. And that's why the ecosystem approach I mentioned before is really important.
My last topic or question would be is that the audience is very diverse. So we're students, academics, parents here, and well, we all know that technology is rapidly changing. So what would you say is something that we need to look out for in the future? Like if we would have this panel discussion 2 years from now, what would you think we would start with?
We'd probably be all algorithms or kind of digital versions of ourselves. I suppose my advice would be very simple, and I'll kind of leave it at this: don't panic. We'll be all right.
I mean, I don't know how I beat that. I mean, similarly to Carlton, you know, I've learned as a student of history that there is nothing new under the sun. Joseph Weizenbaum was warning about this AI problem in 1975 in his book. You know, Marshall McLuhan and Neil Postman have been warning about this for not 100 years, but maybe 50, 70 years. And so we are only, you know, this close away from chaos at any given point, in either in our politics or in society. Don't panic, but I do think it's important to sit down and reevaluate what is important to you. You know, what does it mean to be a human being? This church of automation, this church of efficiency, this church of AI, the zeitgeist I mentioned, what does it take away from us that we genuinely need to be human? So I think when you focus on our humanness, when you focus on God, when you focus on the things that are truly good in life, none of those things are on social media. They're not on the internet, right? There's not a whole lot that is useful on there. So ask more questions, read more books, do the hard things, because life is hard.
Yeah, I would like to highlight the difference between the meaningful and meaningless use of technology. And I think we have to focus more on the a meaningful and purposeful use of this kind of tools and platforms and AI and all. And this way we will be able to have our human importance also, and we can use this technology in a meaningful way.
Thank you so much for your participation and the inputs and
Thank
for
you.
the attention.
Welcome at the second panel. Thank you very much. This is our last program before lunch, but please stay with us, and it's going to be very interesting. So our topic is digital society, and we will talk about whether social consequences of technological innovation is beneficial or harmful. Let me give you an opening question for all of you, and I would like to ask you, please answer shortly, and then you're going to have personal questions. So the opening question is, how is technological innovation reshaping the way we live, work, and relate to one another? And are these changes ultimately making society better or more fragmented? Let's start with you, sir, and then we can come in this direction.
Okay. Thank you very much. I wanted to congratulate the organizers for proposing this so important conversation, so relevant and so critical conversation. So congratulations for the initiative, and of course, thank you very much for allowing me to be part of this conversation. I'm very happy, very honored. So. If you don't mind, I would like to start with a provocation, a small provocation. I don't know if it's a small provocation on how technology is changing things and how we behave, how we... I will come, even if I am aware that there is another panel later on specifically on artificial intelligence. I am more focused right now on this topic, on artificial intelligence in learning process. In my university, we are running a unit on this integration, on the elements of it. And the reflection I would like to share on how technology is changing things is, many of you may be aware of this term of transhumanism. How will be the new human beings with these strong interactions with technology? And I think that what I have heard from experts in the last years, it was a matter of what will happen, of the implications of this mega human, but it was always connected with kind of the impact of devices, the impact of implants. It was very technological, it was very hardware, it was software and hardware. And my feeling and my thinking on the social impact of AI is that we are entering into an era of transhumanism that probably is quite different than what all the experts were thinking about, is that right now many of us that we are using in an intensive way generative AI, we start to not being so clear if this conclusion that I am reaching right now is a conclusion that I have made by my own means, or is the AI that has helped me to reach this conclusion. I am not right now, I am at the point that I'm not that sure that this decision that I'm taking, it's myself, that I have taken this decision because of my principles and my reflection, or is my interaction, deep and intensive interaction with AI that have pushed me to reach this conclusion. So the issue on what's changing is this very special line where step by step I'm not that aware of my own thinking and the thinking pushed, developed by external tools that are becoming not external tools, but are becoming my internal tools. And because you are focusing all these challenges, especially on young people, I think that this going into a constant interaction with AI tools are pushing us into this framework. And I would like to put this on the table that this is this thing of transhumanism not as a problem by itself, but as a fact. We are entering into an era that we are not aware of what we are thinking, and then by my own and what is pushed by outside. And the element, not the problem, but the thing to be aware is to be aware of this and to start managing this as a society and as individuals. This is my small provocation.
Thank you, Frances. Marco, please.
Okay, going back to your question, does technology changes how we think, what we do? Yes, of course. Short answer, yes, it does.
And better or worse?
So yeah, well, that's anytime there is a technology powerful enough, interesting enough, or fast or efficient enough to change the paradigms we operate on, it's going to change how we think. It's going to affect deeply not just what we do, but how we think about doing it. As long as we let this technology do it, that when we could, if we were having this conversation 500 years ago, not now, we would be talking about how the printing press is going to affect the way we think, or how printing books instead of copying them by hand is going to affect negatively how we learn. If we were having this conversation 2,500 years ago, Socrates would be very highly critical of writing, because writing kills philosophical debate. So it's, I don't think, and that goes for the second part of your question, I don't think that there are technological tools or technologies generally speaking, that are intrinsically negative or positive, or they are intrinsically uniting us or fragmenting our world. Because we can say that the internet 30 years ago started a very unifying way of communicating. And political debate has never been as divisive as it is now, we can argue. So I believe that, and that is something that in the previous panel has been addressed too, the difference is what kind of environment we are creating and we want to live in. The difference is made by what we think is valuable as humans. Technology doesn't change who we are per se. It amplifies
certain elements that are characteristics of a zeitgeist of a certain time and culture. Technology doesn't change us as long as we don't let it do it.
Thank you, Marco. Norman?
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. My problem is it's kind of schizophrenic. On the one hand, I think we have technologies now at our fingertips that are truly astonishing. I think AI and the potential of AI is enormous for the future. As a problem-solving technology, not the caricatured version of what we hear all the time, as if interacting with an AI machine is that you're actually talking or that there's thinking going on, because AI machines don't think. You cannot think if you do not understand the concepts that you're dealing with. This is an algorithm that's putting things together on the basis of a prediction. It doesn't understand the context. It is driven by you, not by itself. If you go into any chat GPT or any of these chat technologies, you drive the conversation. It doesn't. It'll push you in certain directions only if you want it to. And then you come to the conclusion, like that idiot journalist in the New York Times, who, when ChatGPT told him to kill his wife or whatever, I mean, if I was married to that journalist, I think I would do that, because if that's what journalism is. If you look at his conversation, he prompts the entire thing to kind of come back and tell him to do something that he then says, oh my God, this machine's telling me to do something. I mean, he's just basically he's an idiot. My problem is, at the same time, is that while we have created this, which I think is a remarkable human achievement, we are living in a society where we see human agency as the problem, as one of the biggest problems that face us. Just look at the obsession with the environment, the green agenda. If you were living in the EU, look at the Green Deal. Look at the assumption that's been made there. The assumption there, ladies and gentlemen, is that human beings are the problem. We're using up too much energy. We're destroying the planet, which is a remarkable thing if you think about it, because if we are the problem, how did we ever get here? How did we ever create the technologies that mean that we all live a standard of living that, past generations would be envious of us? How we ever got to where we are now? And so we live in this kind of contradiction, that on the one hand we have potentially, every one of you is carrying around one of these. Yeah. This has more computing power than the whole of NASA had when they put a man on the moon in 1969. That's what we all carry. The capacity is fantastic. And what we seem to be missing here is that because we are succumbing to this notion that human beings are the problem, that we have to rein in human ambition, these devices, which are in the hands of all our children, should be the tools that we should be using to inspire them to understand the past, to understand physics, to understand chemistry, to understand the mathematics. If we were educating, and I think the previous panel was completely correct in making this point about how we've lost the authority to educate, and that's the problem, the authority of knowledge has been undermined, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. We wouldn't be having a conversation where we are concerned about what people are doing with technology, because what they would be doing would be trying to advance knowledge. They would be doing the kind of things that kids should be doing, which is pushing back on the orthodoxies, questioning, fighting back, looking for new things, doing exciting, imaginative things. Instead, we're sitting here obsessed about what the kids might be doing or thinking, because we don't trust the kids, because we don't trust ourselves. And that, to me, is the kind of contradiction that we're in at the moment. And how we resolve that is really the key to the future.
Thank you so much, Norman. Georgina, what do you think?
Thank you for your question. I assume it is not a big surprise when I tell that I also believe that technology has changed a lot how we live, work, and even connect with each other. In the everyday lives, technology has made things much easier. We can communicate quickly, get or find information instantly, and do many things from home online. On the other hand, we are almost always connected, which can be tiring, and it is hard to switch off. In work, technology has made or has created many new opportunities. People can work from home, teams can collaborate across countries much easier, and of course there are some downsides as well. For instance, some jobs are disappearing because of automation, and people can feel pressure always to be available. And furthermore, technology has increased the gap between people who are good with digital tools and those who are not. So, and of course, our relationships have changed a lot because of technology. It is easier to stay in touch with others and find new people online. On the other hand, I have to mention that some of our relationships have become more superficial, and social media can make people compare themselves to others more frequently. So overall, I think that technology is not simply a good or a bad thing. I firmly believe that it is both, because technology gives us many new opportunities, but also new challenges as well. It depends on how we use it, whether we can connect or whether we can focus on the real connection or not. But yes, I'm a social scientist and I work at the Youth Research Institute, so I have to speak about youngsters and young people. And we realized that over the past couple of decades, there have been considerable social and profound social changes that have a strong impact on the lives of young people. And as a result, the youth life stage has both expanded and changed. Here in Hungary, the term youth usually refers to people between the ages of 15 and 29, but there are some limitations, largely due to the fact that the characteristics of this youth life stage, which were typical decades ago, are either no longer relevant or are exclusive to this age group. What do I mean by this? To become an adult, you need to experience some life events. These cornerstones of our lives includes reaching the highest level of education, entering the labor market, moving out of the family nest, getting married, and having children. Due to the societal changes, however, these life events are being experienced later and later, and today youngsters are studying for longer, entering the labor market later, changing their careers more frequently, and they often move out of the parental house later, and they regularly postpone starting a family at their early 30s. And we realized that for those under 29, we can often only examine future plans, for instance, in relation to starting a family. And there are many theories about the reasons, but I think that we can highlight three of these main changes: globalization, the rise of digital media, and the emerge of polycrisis. And all of these profound societal changes have a strong impact on the lives of youngsters. So I think that it is not a simple question, and the answer is more complicated, because we can see, of course, that technology has affects young people's lives, but there are many other societal changes as well.
Thank you so much, all of you. And we have like 20 or 25 minutes more. Maybe at the end, I would like to give you the chance for audience questions. But now I would like to turn to you. Maybe we can go backwards, if you don't mind, Georgina. As an expert on youth demography and generational questions, how is growing up in a fully digital environment shaping young people's social skills, identity, and sense of community from childhood, in your opinion, please?
I believe that the digital environment doesn't simply harm or improve social development, rather it transforms it. It strengthens new skills such as digital communication, while at the same time pushing certain traditional social experiences into the background. The impact largely depends on how balanced the ratio of online and offline relationships is in a youngster's life. But I also think that we need to look at the international trends as well, and we can see that international research, some international research shows that the new young generations are increasingly and greatly suffer from loneliness, which is serious social consequences of the weakening of our traditional communities such as family, nation, and Christian communities. Theories suggested that accelerating digital or technological change, or due to the accelerating technological change, the members of these new generations have become alienated from relationships, work, and nature. And the issue of the youth loneliness became central in the public discourse during the COVID pandemic. However, the signs of increasing loneliness had already been visible earlier. In 2019, some estimates suggested that more than 14 million young people aged 15 to 29 were struggling with mental health problems. An OECD report revealed in 2022 that half of youngsters in EU hadn't reported that they hadn't received adequate mental health care. And the UNICEF also highlighted that after road accidents, suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people. So I think that the key question is, how can we, or what can we actually do about this? Social support is among the most important and effective coping mechanism. It is so the sense of belonging, of being part of a community is especially important for maintaining physical and mental health of young people, and it is no coincidence that the social support occupies the third level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I think that this is the case, and this is why we should talk about the serious social consequences, and it is more important the possible solutions as well.
I think we all remember COVID time when we had to stay at home, and so thank you. It's really important, this aspect, that communities, maybe religious communities or clubs or sport activities together, it's very beneficial. Now I turn to Norman. So, Mr. Luis, do you think today's concerns about the social risks of technology reflect real structural changes, or are they driven more by cultural anxieties? What do you think about these risks?
The simple answer is yes. It's definitely cultural. I think some of this was referred to in the previous panel, but I do want to just step back a second, because I want to make what I think is a really fundamental point, and which I think people have forgotten or don't understand, which is this. And I speak as someone who was the Director of Technology Research for Orange for 15 years, when all these big changes took place at the beginning of the web and all of that. So I experienced and saw all of this firsthand from a technology company point of view. And the fundamental point, ladies and gentlemen, that you have to understand is that social media and all the technology that we are talking about today did not come from the technology companies. It was driven by young people. This is such a fundamental point. Because do you know where it actually began? It began in Japan. Young teenage girls discovered that their father's coding machines, what were they called? The pager. The paging machines could be used to send messages for free because this was a channel that was to alert someone to then go and make a phone call. And what the Japanese girls did was they began to develop a code that they could use the pager to communicate with their boyfriends who they didn't want their parents to know about or whatever. And the NTT Docomo, who were the carrier in Japan, began to see what was going on and realized that there was a channel, an engineering channel in their communication system that they hadn't thought about as being something that could be used to transfer data. And that's where data came from. It wasn't discovered by an engineer or a technologist sitting in a laboratory in France or in Tokyo. It came from the needs of young people. In other words, what happened was that these young people were looking for ways to escape from the gaze of their parents, from adults all the time. It's something we all did as young people. There's nothing new in that behavior. You know, when my generation was about music, you know, you either liked the Beatles or you liked the Rolling Stones, and you dressed in a certain way, and they were like a foreign tribe. Your parents had no idea what the hell was going on. They couldn't understand the music. They hated their haircuts, you know, all of it. And the more that they hated it, the more we liked it, you know, as young people. That's what young people do. In other words, what I'm really trying to get at here is that a lot of this discussion is wrong and gets it wrong because it's an adult perception of what young people are doing. And the projection of adult concerns and fears onto young people and not understanding that what young people were trying to do was to solve their problem. And their problem was that they were growing up in a society that was ring-fenced by risk, that they could not interact with their peers in the way that we had done in previous generations because all activity was overseen by adults. School, when you were at home, you always were in the presence of adults. You could not be a kid and just be a kid and do the kind of crazy stuff that young people do. So what they did is they picked up the tools that were available then, which by the way, it wasn't social media, it was like instant messaging and etc., and began to use those. And then the technology companies recognized and realized what was going on, and then they were able to monetize that. And that's where the whole dynamic begins to take place. So the real lesson from this is this. If you think that banning smartphones or stopping kids at a certain age from using social media is the solution, you're living in cloud cuckoo land, because the kids will find a way around it. The real problem is, as was said in the previous thing, that what we've really lost, the real problem here is the adults of the problem. It's adult authority. It's the adult belief in knowledge. It's all these things that are so important, that are the parameters within which these kids are interacting with the world around them. And so until we get ourselves, we start taking ourselves more seriously as adults and looking to ourselves and understanding the problems that we're projecting onto our kids, we are not going to solve this problem. Whether indeed it's a problem that we have to solve, I'm not 100% sure about that. You know, I think that the kids are all right, actually. When you look at what kids are doing and their aspirations and everything, what I'm fearful of is that they are being today inspired or not inspired by the fact that we as adults don't trust ourselves, we don't trust each other, we don't trust our kids. We are looking to the state to regulate these things where we should be taking responsibility for this. You know, I say to parents, and I get this a lot when I do these talks, and I have people come and say, but my children do blah, blah, blah. And I say, well, why don't you just say no? Why don't you just say, no, you can't have a phone in your bedroom when you go to sleep. You cannot use the internet at this time of the day, and you can restrict that. More importantly, you want to develop that relationship with your child, that there's an open relationship, that you trust your children, and that they can come to you when they do see things that upset them. And there are a lot of things out there that we should not allow our kids to see. But that's up to us. It's not up to the experts or the state or anybody else to determine how that should be, how we should be bringing up our children. In other words, the problem, ladies and gentlemen, is not the technology. The technology, as I said in my previous comments, has got enormous potential if it could be used to inspire young people, particularly from an educational point of view. I mean, what could be more fantastic than the story of and I've done the research on this, there's something like 723 different inventions that go in to make up a smartphone over the centuries. Tell the story of that to kids. Inspire them. So instead of them, you know, finding it more inspiring to sit and watch videos of their friends and their cats and people falling over and all of that, that they are using that to research the physics, the chemistry. This is an amazing tool if we can liberate it from the strictures that we ourselves are placing upon our own children. That's the problem. The problem's not the technology, it's us, adult society. There's the problem.
It was really important to stepping back and focusing on the real issue. So thank you. Gentlemen, if you want to react, you can do that, maybe agree or disagree. But let me give Marco a question and then you decide if you react or answer that. How can policymakers strike the right balance? So we are talking now about the balance between fostering innovation and protecting society from its unintended consequences.
They can't.
You. So now you have time to react. Thank you.
No, okay. I'm not a big advocate for policy-making decisions, honestly, because, and I agree with Mr. Lewis, the issue is not the technology. Therefore, if we identify a problem with artificial intelligence specifically, we need to agree that since the technology is not a problem, the solution is not about the technology. Is about the human value we put in technology. And it's something, I don't want to repeat myself, but again, it's fundamental to understanding my point of view. I think that technology is an amplifier of possibility, an enhancer, amplifier, call it the way you want. It doesn't change who we are if we don't let it change who we are. Meaning, can we find the balance you were mentioning? Yes, obviously I believe it's possible if we act soon enough. Yes, if we act in a timely manner and we don't let things progress in a negative, potentially destructive way. Of course we can. But we need to understand what makes us human and what makes us uniquely valuable in society. So, short, easy answer. Yes, we can. We read more books. We look at more art. It was mentioned in the panel before. Many institutions operate on the assumption that students specifically don't read books. And it's true. I think it's what Dr. Brink was mentioning. I think that the idea of a congressman, members of the parliament, I'm sorry, we are in the Scottish Parliament. The idea that we don't need to teach kids how to write or how to do math because they were born with a calculator and computer, I think it's absolutely horrifying. It's abysmally stupid. It's worse than horrifying because that only focuses on the idea of the efficient application of a certain skill. The point is that we are more than skill. According to the logic, we don't need to school at all, because everything I need to know, I can find it on Wikipedia or TikTok. It's as simple as that. We don't need the teachers, because literally I can give any textbook I can imagine I can give it to Notebook LM, and it will generate a complete lesson plan, a complete podcast-like rendition of a whole textbook in less than 15 minutes. So we don't do certain things. We don't go to school. We don't learn in schools because we learn skills. We go to learning environments because they shape our mind in a constructive, sustainable way. And the best way to do that is to underline and highlight the value of a certain kind of education, reading in a critical way, developing analytical skills that are accountable for the ideas of the individual. The difference between what AI does and what we do as humans is that AI has no critical understanding, no critical accountability for their outcomes. We still are able to do that. When Laurent mentioned a little bit of confusion early in his opening speech about that, it's not really artificial intelligence, it's algorithmic intelligence, which it is correct, because any large language models operate in a predictive mathematical way, has no critical depth whatsoever. It has no critical or analytical accountability. To me, the only way that policymakers, so to say, can balance between innovation and regulation is to strike that critical balance, to nurture minds, to develop the idea that whatever they say, whatever they read, it needs to be verified. It must be easy to check, verify, and criticize in case.
Last but not least, Mr. Puyol, what kind of leadership is needed today, in your opinion, to balance competitiveness in innovation with social responsibility in the digital age?
I think a leadership who is humanistic, who is smart, and who is proactive, which is proactive, humanistic. And I think it's not that easy. But before this, I would like to share with you a reflection that pushes us into this conclusion.
Please, of course.
And it's the framework that we are creating on this space, and I have reached some of these elements because we have designed courses for our professors in our university. We have a unity of integration of AI. We have created courses for our professors, and now I am giving courses to our students, not on how to use AI, but how to learn in the age of AI. And then I will come back to leadership. I would like to share with you two reflections of the students, because we in this subject we make them to go into metacognition, to go on reflecting on the process, on what are they doing, and I think it's quite interesting to me. And one of the students, this is a second-year student, said, "I think it was good to intentionally do research without using AI, since it is something that we do less and less. It is so easy to just open ChatGPT and ask it to do it for you that we barely do anything ourselves anymore. It felt good to do it on my own and put my brain to work. This is a second year student on undergrad program. And another one. I wanted to mention that this course made me realize the dependence I had developed on AI to start a creative process. I started thinking about it, and I remember that in school, ideas used to come to me naturally before beginning an assignment. But now I need that initial little push with AI. That is why I now try to take more control of the work from the beginning, turning to AI for more automatic tasks or to expand on my ideas while making sure that those ideas come from me. So I wanted to put on the table these reflections because I don't know if they are general ones, but for sure that they are not isolated cases of students that realize that they are more and more dependent on their own thinking thanks to the easiness and on the answers provided by these tools. And as the forum is mainly focused on young people, I think that this is the key element that we have to consider, and then the answer on designing the leadership is the problem right now we have is not about using AI or not using AI. You win if you use AI, you lose if you don't use, or the reverse. The reverse, you lose if you use AI, you win if you are banned for using AI or you are pushed away from AI. I think the winners and losers is you are in the framework of losing if you are a learner, if you use AI as substitution for your task of thinking. If you use AI for providing you the task that the teachers have sent to you. Of course, you can win if you don't use AI and you work by your own. But as it was pointed out before, the world that you will be living in is a world where you are expert on your own domain and you foster the results and you foster your thinking using and enhancing and amplifying with a more profound reflection using AI. And the winners and the losers is not using, and is using in a way that substitutes you. You will put you as a young people that are not able to develop your critical thinking and your intellectual positions. Coming back to the question on leadership is I need leadership that ensures that I have the framework that makes me understand that making things easier in the short term is not the best way for me as a young people to develop and be able to address the challenges that we have to do to perform because I will need this critical thinking for managing, because if I only depend on what the AI is providing to me, I will be the ones who are served and are used by the ones that can channel the AI in a critical way. So this leadership that has to be humanistic, smart, and proactive, I hope I would like to be pushed not by rules, but by principles and guidelines by the EU, but I cannot wait for having this. I would like this leadership to be pushed and presented by the Ministry of Education of my country, but I cannot wait for having this leadership to address this thing. I would like my university, the University of Navarra, to have this leadership humanistic, smart, and proactive. But as a teacher, I cannot wait that they design the whole program and the whole strategy. I have to ensure my own leadership in order to how to redesign the instructional process in order me as a teacher to ensure that my students will have friction. My students will not able to do things easy because they reach the results, but they will have to suffer in the process, not because I like them to suffer, because developing your profound intellectual skills require time and suffering, because it's a process, it's an intellectual process, and it's my responsibility, my leadership, to ensure that how do I redesign my task with the students where I am able to ensure that there is friction. They cannot do the things. With AI, they think, they work, they discuss, they use paper, they use pencil, and then I push them to foster their thinking, challenging their own thinking, the hypothesis with AI to go further, because this is the framework that they will have and need in the future. And finally, I would like to push and to show my students that this is the own leadership that they have to have. They have to use AI in a humanistic, in a smart, and in a proactive way.
Thank you so much, and we are about to close. It would be great to have a second round, but we are running out of time. So let me give you a final question, and please forgive me, dear audience. We won't open it now for audience questions, but during lunch break, during lunchtime, please have great conversations with each other. So we encourage you to maintain it. So the last question is the future, of course. Are you more optimistic or concerned? And please, if you can just mention one or two things in one or two sentences in connection with your country, maybe. So here are members of this panel from Hungary, Belgium, Italy, and Spain. And so you can very shortly answer in connection with future, please.
My short answer is that I'm optimistic because we are here and we are talking about these challenges. So thank you so much for coming. So I think it's very important to strengthen our communities. It is the best way.
Thank you.
I'm doubly optimistic.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. I think we have, with the tools that we have today, as long as we as adults start behaving like adults and not like infants, copying what our children are doing, sharing videos and wasting our time instead of reading books and etc. Yeah, that's the problem, what I was trying to say earlier. The problem is that it wasn't the kids, it's that the adults became kids. We all started behaving like children online. If we can use the technology, we have at our hands the most powerful computational potential to solve the real big problems that face us as human beings. And that's why I'm optimistic, because I think that in the end is what will come out on top.
Well, yes, I'm optimistic too, otherwise I wouldn't be here. I'm optimistic because several times we have, every time there is something that either disrupts or changes the way we do things, there is always a lot of concern as much as there's a lot of attention. But again, writing didn't kill philosophical debate as much as the radio didn't kill live performances, as much as modern Picasso didn't kill the art of portraits, as much as television didn't kill cinema, and so on and so on. Artificial intelligence is not going to kill our ability of thinking, our ability of learning. The key part, though, is that we need to keep in mind that it's a tool. I believe that and that is a more societal issue, that it should always be very clear in every situation that certain elements are goals and certain elements are tools, and we use the tools in order to achieve the goals. A lot of social, learning, economical imbalance comes from confusing the tools as the goals. We can't use AI just because it's there just for the sake of it. It's an incredible tool. It's going to become a necessary accessory, yes, but it needs to be used in synergy, not in substitution of human input.
Let's contradict a little bit. I am very, very concerned with the next future. I think, very short, I think that we will face a situation where we have, again, in the framework of young people, we will have a framework where we will have a very, very, very smart people that have been enhanced by these super powerful tools. In the same situation, we will have many, many, many young people extremely dependent on their own way of thinking, deciding, connected to external tool that they will need it, and they will decrease, not maintain and not fostering, but they will decrease their own intellectual ability. I think we will go into a framework of a great divergence, and it will have a lot of societal implications. It's very concerning because it's very optimistic at the same time, because we'll have many people that will very, very smart, more than we have ever seen before, but in the framework of a lot of inequality. I think it will be something that we have to. It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Appreciate all of you, Kiskozma Georgina, Norman Luis, Marco Crivellero, and Frances Puyol. My name is Christian Todt, and have a great day. Thank you so much.